Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video outlook for the week of Monday, the 18th of August, 2014. Let's start off our tour looking at sea surface temperature anomalies. Notice how we've got some pretty cold water coming in over a pretty small area, but those are some pretty sharp anomalies there, reflecting several degrees below the long-term average. And then in the tropical central Pacific, stretching into the eastern Pacific a little bit, we do see some of these colder anomalies showing up. The El Nino never quite made it, but I do believe that we will see this filling in over the next several weeks, and by the time we get into the fall months, we should start to see the El Nino really taking shape. This area of colder anomalies that's showing up in here, primarily due to the tropical cyclone activity that we have seen, churning up the waters there. The subtropical Atlantic remaining above normal, the deep tropics running below normal for the most part, and the Gulf of Mexico, Northwest Caribbean, very much warmer than it should be. And if we look at the ocean heat content, this is where the highest heat content values in the Western Hemisphere lie right now. Fortunately, we haven't had anything tap into this, and hopefully we won't, because these are some very robust numbers in terms of upper ocean heat content, and it's just a matter of, well, where there'll be something to tap into it. In fact, if we look at the Gulf specifically, all of this green shading in here is water temperatures that are 30 degrees Celsius or higher. This mustard color right here, this greenish yellow, is 31 Celsius or higher, and these oranges represents 32 degrees Celsius or higher. We are talking about water temperatures in a majority of the Gulf of Mexico running 85 to 88, close to 90 degrees in some areas at the surface. But it's this ocean heat content, the upper ocean heat content values, and those are pretty high right in here, that really matter, because the skin of the ocean can get cooled off just by a passing tropical cyclone, a shift in wind direction, a lot of heavy rain. It's the extent below the ocean surface that the warm water lies that determines what the heat content values are. And as you can see, the Western Caribbean and certainly the Gulf of Mexico running very warm. We just don't have anything, fortunately, taking advantage of it. In fact, looking at the Saharan air layer analysis from the University of Wisconsin site, you can see this stream of very dry, stable air aimed right at and through the deep tropics and into the Caribbean and points west, and you can even follow that right here and clearly see the outline of the African dust right through here, giving the Lesser Antilles through Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, into Cuba, the Bahamas, and South Florida, sort of that milky white hazy sky look because of this Saharan air dust that has come off of Africa many thousands of miles to the east. Looking at this area, this is sort of a big monsoonal gyre, a fancy way of saying a large elongated area of low pressure. Look at this, kind of has a sideways U shape to it, curled up a little bit here. When you see something this large, you typically think it's going to take a while for something to develop, if it's going to develop at all. On the other hand, when something this large does develop, it can really have a large envelope of energy to work with. None of the global models really suggesting anything coming out of this anytime soon, so we'll just watch it and see what happens. Hurricane Center has this area outlined as a low probability region for development. Looking at the water vapor, or at least the total precipitable water in the atmosphere, notice a couple of things. These tropical waves moving through, there's one there, and then this large rotating area of low pressure, generally speaking. But then at the end of the frame, and even through the rest of these frames of animation, you can kind of track this dry air column coming through, punching through the deep tropics. And even at the end of the animation, watch right here, another surge of this dry air coming in near the Cape Verde Islands, really plaguing any chances of development in the Atlantic Basin right now. And added to that is the sinking motion. Okay, this is the west coast of Africa. Whoops, my telestrator being crazy with me. West coast of Africa, eastern North America right here, and in between, not much of this green showing up. Green typically means go. Very simplified version of explaining this. And brown means don't go. So sinking motion over here in the western Pacific, and parts of the central Pacific too. And then the rising motion is confined to the eastern Pacific for the time being, where we have tropical storm Karina, very weak, sitting out here in the open waters, and then another tropical depression that's formed farther to the east that won't have any impact to land. But this is where the upward motion is right now. It is not in the Atlantic Basin for the time being. Now, the different models are suggesting the Madden-Julian oscillation, which favors upward motion, clearly favoring phase 1, Western Hemisphere and Africa, according to the GFS. But on the other hand, the Euro and its related ensemble members suggesting weak phase 1 amplification, followed by a migration into phases 2 and 3, which still favors the Atlantic to some extent, as well as generating more tropical wave activity over the Indian Ocean, eventually making its way across Africa, which could lead to development down the road. Now, the bottom line, neither of the models, the GFS nor the Euro, is favoring the Western Pacific anytime soon. So the upward motion confined to the Pacific and maybe the Eastern Pacific, that is, and maybe eventually into the Atlantic Basin. But for the week ahead, I think for the next 5 to 7 days, I don't see anything developing that could impact land in the Atlantic Basin, and that includes the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean. All right, well, that's a look at the tropics for the week ahead. Again, I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com, my website, of course. Always a privilege and an honor to be able to do these broadcasts for you on Hurricane Pro in HD. Hope you learned something from them. I'll be back next Monday with another look for you.